Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Relationship Advice for Women. We are back again with another segment of The Other Woman, except this time, Miss Keri was not the other woman. She was the woman who had been betrayed. So, before we get into her story, we want to hear a little bit about you, Miss Keri. Tell us some background information. Tell us where you're from.
Okay. So I am originally from Canada, but I'm actually living in New Zealand.
Mm-hmm.
I've been here for 15 years.
Okay.
I moved here to study to become a teacher. So I was actually an art teacher for 8 years before I had kids.
Okay.
And then after becoming a mom, I actually realized that I didn't want to be a teacher anymore. And I decided I wanted to help moms, but I didn't know how or what that was going to look like.
Mm-hmm.
So it was through a very deep journey into myself and through my husband's infidelity that I learned, I guess, what I wanted to do. And that's come down to coaching with a special focus on relationships.
So I'm glad you brought that up. So your husband's infidelity, did that happen in Canada or New Zealand?
No, that happened here in New Zealand. It happened when I was pregnant with our second child.
Okay.
And so there was obviously a lot of trauma, a lot of hurt feelings, a lot of difficult situations that had to be overcome.
So before we get to how that part happened, where did you all meet?
So we met here in New Zealand.
In New Zealand, okay.
We met in a bar. My friend was visiting from Canada. Long story short, here we are. And we have been together for 15 years.
Okay, so you moved to New Zealand 15 years ago?
Well, I guess it was 16 years ago that I moved here.
Okay, you moved to New Zealand 16 years ago. You met your husband in New Zealand.
Yeah.
And when did you get married to your husband?
So we got married 9 years ago.
Okay, 9 years ago. So you dated about 5-6 years?
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And so did he so lead us up to the point of the infidelity. Was he like what year were you all on before the infidelity started?
So the infidelity was in 2018.
2018. And how was your relationship before then?
I would say that it wasn't very good.
Can you give us some background?
Yeah. Our relationship was solid up until having kids, really. But it was when I was pregnant with number 2 that just everything changed. And it was, a lot of it was me internally. I didn't handle pregnancy very well. I was miserable and depressed, uncomfortable. I had a fractured ankle that I didn't actually know that I had a fractured ankle, but obviously that helped me be very miserable.
Right.
I wasn't listening to I would talk to all my friends, and we just weren't in a place where we were communicating with each other, where we were prioritizing each other, where we were in a loving and affectionate kind of place. It was very much in a transactional, high expectations of each other, that kind of stuff going on. Now, when I learned about the affair, it was quite it was quite a while after it had finished.
So
My
before we get to that,
husband,
I want to know, when you said you all were solid, can you describe what does solid mean to you?
So it means that we were talking with each other, we were respecting each other, prioritizing each other, having fun, doing
What couples should do.
yeah, enjoying each other's company.
Right.
Right?
Mhm.
But it wasn't, I'm going to say that it wasn't as solid before as it is now.
Okay. And okay, so leading up, if it was solid before, you said he didn't step out, as far as he says, until your second pregnancy.
Mhm.
Okay. And so how far in between was your first pregnancy to the second one?
2.5 years.
2.5 years. That's when he decided to step out while you were pregnant. So what brought about that? What was his reasoning for that?
He was obviously in a vulnerable state. I didn't see the value of sex or understand the value of sex.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until after the infidelity and after we were able to talk about all the reasons, all that led up to it. So there was a lot of like texting inappropriate stuff and comments and all this stuff. And a lot of it actually came from a work environment and this sort of boys club. There were, like a text group where they would send each other like basically porn. So
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't a like a loving safe space for relationship growth, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
But it was definitely an escape, a space to escape. And because he wasn't feeling safe to communicate his needs and desires with me, it led to an opportunity where someone else could come in and fill a gap, if you will.
Okay, and so when you said he was vulnerable, he was in a vulnerable state, what do you mean by vulnerable? How was he vulnerable?
Well, he wasn't having his needs met.
What were his needs?
I would say his needs were to be satisfied sexually,
Mm-hmm.
to have someone interested in being with him, because the place I was at the moment is basically I was having sex as like a thing on the to-do list.
Mm-hmm. As a pregnant woman, you weren't feeling like your body was going through so many different changes. Is that what it was? You just didn't feel like it?
Honestly, even before that,
Mm-hmm.
before I was pregnant,
Mm-hmm.
I didn't have that understanding. I didn't know, I didn't have this like deep desire that I needed sex all the time.
Okay.
And so from my perspective, I was like, well, we're having sex, so it must be it must be satisfying for him. But the reality was that he wanted someone who wanted to be with him.
And you weren't showing that you wanted to be with him? What were you doing?
I was just being there, but not, I was there, I wasn't engaged.
Mm-hmm.
If that makes sense.
You were there, but you were not present.
Hmm.
Okay. And so, was this about a reaction to postpartum, or were you not present even before the first pregnancy?
I'd say I probably wasn't that present before, but it was definitely worse.
Okay. And so you said your relationship was solid though before children. So you said y'all did everything that couples do.
Mm.
So was everything solid before pregnancy, or was everything not solid before pregnancy?
I still think it was solid,
Okay.
but it wasn't. But as I think it was after kids that I became less present.
So it was after children. So postpartum. Yeah. How old is your husband, and how old are you?
I'm 39. Sorry, I just turned 39. And my husband is 42.
42. And so how old were you all when you were pregnant?
30.
Okay, so you were 30 and he was like 33, 34. Mm-hmm. Okay, so he was fairly young. And this was his first child.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So yeah. And I'm just asking that because I do find that younger men don't that might have just they've never experienced that before. You know, the postpartum thing. And people, and not just younger men, but people who have not ever had a child. Have not experienced that. And so when you said he didn't know how to express his needs, are you even saying that he didn't even try to tell you how he was feeling?
No, he didn't. Well, no, that's not fair. He didn't express those kinds of sexual desires, what he needed from me, because I wasn't listening I had no interest in listening to him. I feel like I had taken on a lot of maybe cultural, just societal expectations that all these things that he should have been doing, like he should be making me happy. It's all about me. All this kind of unrealistic bullshit, really.
He should be making you happy. Like what? Were you saying is why you were pregnant? Like what was happy for you?
Yeah. I did. I had these really unrealistic goals and expectations, and I think a lot of it is from my own childhood and seeing my parents and seeing how my dad would always kind of do whatever my mom wanted, and so why couldn't he do that for me? And it was a lot. There was a lot of stuff going
so
on.
What are some examples about what you think now was unrealistic?
Having high expectations. So I would also expect that I could just say all this negative stuff to him. Like I wasn't sharing anything good.
Mm-hmm. What were your complaints?
Sorry?
What were your complaints?
I was complaining about the kids being hard work. So like when I was pregnant, for example, I had a 2-year-old at home. And I was in pain and miserable in my body. Mm-hmm. So I was complaining about just the kids being hard, wanted him to come home and cook dinner after work. I expected him to basically make me happy, which was not his job at all.
Yeah, so you say, okay, so you said you expected him to make you happy, or were you expecting him to help? It just sounds like two different things. Because you being a mom, a new mom, not being used to a child, that's hard work. So like helping and being happy. Did you feel like he wasn't really helping with the parenting part?
Oh, absolutely. He helped all the time. He was a great dad.
Okay, right. I'm not saying he wasn't a great dad, and I'm not saying you're not a great mom. I'm just saying, what about the child was hard? What part?
I think it was just being at home all day.
Okay.
And I also think I had expectations on myself to find being a stay-at-home mom fulfilling in its own right.
Mm-hmm.
And so when I realized it wasn't, I guess I found all that really hard and projected that onto him as well.
Right. And do you feel like you didn't have the energy to, do other things versus stay at home?
No. And because things like navigating nap times and meals and all that stuff with little kids, especially when you're new to it and when you're pregnant and feeling like shit in that pregnancy, it all makes everything feel really hard, right? Really overwhelming. And I just, yeah, I couldn't get past that, and I projected all of that pain and all of that challenge onto him.
Okay. Yeah, and so it just sounds like you taking responsibility for your part, but it was just a lack of knowledge.
Mm-hmm.
Because hormonal. You were hormonal and didn't know how to handle those hormones. That was a lot going on. And so, in your second pregnancy, did your husband ever say like, okay, it got to a point where maybe he couldn't take it, and then he stepped out? Because I'm just trying to figure out what made him step out in the second pregnancy, but not the first one.
Well, I think the second pregnancy was way worse than the first one. The first pregnancy, we still communicated well. I guess we were both excited but nervous at the same time. Whereas the second one, having the other child with us, the dynamic was really different.
That's true.
And so for me wanting, I guess, an escape from the first child, he would go off with our daughter and do all that kind of stuff. And yeah, just an opportunity came up. He couldn't, he struggled to say no to it.
Yeah. Do you blame yourself for him stepping out?
No, I don't.
Okay, so he takes full responsibility for that.
Mm-hmm. He takes responsibility for his side, and I take responsibility for mine.
Okay, and then so can you tell me the story about like the temptation leading up to him actually stepping out?
Yeah, so in the male workplace, I mentioned that they had these chats going on, and so there was obviously conversation about women in the workplace, and then a woman at work, it was a female at work that it happened with, overheard some of the conversation, started basically she started saying things and like sending pictures and this kind of stuff that was actually something that my husband had always wanted me to do, but I wasn't comfortable doing. So a lot of the kind of understanding that has come through this is an understanding of each other's needs and wants and it wasn't actually really difficult stuff, but it was just kind of getting through that uncomfortable stage and understanding why it's important.
Okay, so what did she send him that he always wanted?
Like an interest in like pleasuring herself. He has always been interested in a woman pleasuring herself and a woman finding pleasure. And I always had issues with that, probably from childhood and societal expectations and women and masturbation and all of this kind of stuff. And that's what he was really interested in, because she would talk about her own pleasure and he found that really exciting.
Okay, so are you saying like you didn't understand that was an actual need? That's a need, and that's something that you decided that that's what y'all are going to do since y'all were rebuilding? I'm asking.
Yeah, so we actively share this kind of information now and talk so much. We talk so openly about everything now, our own pleasure, and really exploring that more.
Yeah.
Something that neither of us had really done before.
And so because you weren't comfortable with doing that, you felt like, do you feel like you were wrong for not wanting to do that?
No.
Okay. So
I don't feel like I was wrong, because I didn't know. Well, I didn't know about it.
Okay. So, and I'm just, okay. So let me give you an example. What if, for instance, what if he always wanted you to, and I don't know, I'm trying to think of a modest term to say, well, what if it's like, well, you always wanted to like perform oral on his butt? Like, or what if he wanted to do it on your butt and you all said, well, I don't feel comfortable with that? Is there an excuse to say, well, I told her this is what I wanted and she doesn't like it? Or is there a point where you say, I have to just respect that that's not something that you feel comfortable with doing? Or should I make you feel like, well, you should try this with me because we're married? I'm just trying to understand the dynamics of that.
I think it's important to communicate what those needs are, because I think so many of us are afraid to say what it is that we want out of fear, right? Out of fear that we'll be rejected, that the other person won't want to do that. But I think if we stop the judgment and we just try and understand, I don't think you need to do something that you're not comfortable doing. I don't think that's not what I'm talking about here.
Okay. I'm glad you said that.
I'm talking about learning to understand and explore. And I think it's more about learning what you are comfortable with. And and the fear that I had around doing these things that were not really outside of my comfort zone, but I didn't understand them. I didn't see the value in it. I didn't have the right relationship with myself and my own pleasure to be able to understand it.
Okay. And so so he had the interaction with his coworker, his female coworker. First, does he still work with her?
No.
Okay. And so like, where did they end up meeting for this to, transpire?
Well, that's an interesting long story. Um, this woman actually lived in our house for a little while. She was in a relationship with another colleague, and they both lived in our house. This was long before it happened. But they just kind of kept in our circle, I guess. And she was actually another woman that had been another woman in a few different in a few different relationships. And I think I don't even know how to explain it, but she was just kind of there, and saw an opportunity, if you will.
Okay. And so what happened? What happened? Okay, so did she text him, hey, I want to meet you here, let's do X, Y, and Z? I wanted to know, like, the story of how did they end up being in the point where he was not able to fight the temptation? Like, what was the story leading up to the infidelity?
He made some sort of comment about wanting to see her naked. She overheard that comment, and then I guess started texting him, sending him images. And then she invited him over. I think she was probably masturbating at the time and sending him a video or something, and then he couldn't resist.
Yeah, and so he met at her house. Okay, and is this the only time he did it?
Yeah.
Okay, and so he's never stepped out on your marriage outside of this?
Nope.
Okay, and so how did you feel when you found out?
Oh, I was devastated. He was actually blackmailed into telling me.
Really?
Yeah.
How was that story? What was that like?
So I mentioned that her and this other guy had been together. She was also pregnant at the time that this happened, and she ended up telling her, whether he was a partner or ex-partner, I don't even know. But she told him that she had been with my husband, and he found it hilarious and thought that, and he basically told my husband, either you tell your wife or I'm going to. And so he came home and told me, and then he proceeded to tell everyone else at my husband's place of employment.
Wow. And so she's the one who told him, the guy. And so when you say he was blackmailed, how was he blackmailed? The guy told him, you got to give me some money or something?
No, I just mean that if he didn't tell me, then this other guy was going to tell me, and my husband was like, well, no, I can't have that happen. I have to tell her myself.
So why did she tell this other guy at work?
I couldn't answer that question for you.
That's interesting. Why would she tell him that?
I think it was an attention thing. Maybe she was upset that it was because it was over at that stage.
Okay. And how were you sure that they did not engage in these adulterous activities again?
Because I guess because I was adamant that I needed to know all the details, And I trust that my husband told me all the details.
Okay. And then, so how long after the incident did he tell you?
So this would have been for 3 or 4 months after.
Okay. And so the only reason he told you is because someone else said they were going to tell.
Yep.
And so, like, how does it make you feel to be talking about this right now?
It's not my favorite thing to talk about. I mean, I talk about it a lot, but not probably in this much detail. Yeah, it's hard.
Difficult. And so you said this happened in 2018.
Yeah.
And so what was the rebuilding stage like?
Well, that was very challenging. And when I found out, I left.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know what the future was going to hold.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry. I left, and that night, because I had a 3-month-old baby, I had postpartum depression.
Yeah.
I had a 2.5-year-old. We were all bawling our eyes out all night long. I called my husband at 2 a.m. or something like that, and I said that he had to come, that he had to sort this mess out, that this is not what we signed up for. And the next day we called a therapist and we got into couples therapy because we were obviously in crisis. And and we had to sort it out. And I just said, this is not what we want.
Right. And so how did therapy go?
Therapy was hard at first, and it took a long time for my husband to realize that telling the truth was the way forward. I think because, well, he was worried about hurting me further. Because he already felt deep shame. But so it involved a lot of really hard, really honest conversations, and laying all the cards on the table, if you will. And it took a while for him to understand that actually things were a lot worse in my head than in reality. And that was why it was so important to know all the details.
Yeah. And so what were some of the things, because you said it took him a while to understand that honesty is the only way forward. So what were some of the things that he was still not trying to be truthful about?
I think it was just he already felt so much shame about it that he struggled to relive it. He'd already like cut ties and moved on, right? So having to go back and relive through it was really hard for him. Well, for both of us.
Right.
And then I suppose accepting that he did do these things was the other side of it, because there was already so much shame.
Right. And so what were the things that the therapist would talk about that would make him feel like, oh, he's got to relive this again if he talks about it?
Well, there was a lot of anger
Mm-hmm.
And just before I found out about the affair, I had asked him to go to therapy because he was clearly angry about something and we didn't know what it was. I mean, obviously he was holding on to a lot of guilt, so that was coming out as anger. And so having to work through that, and then understanding that the way that he was communicating with his work friends, that was not okay, and the reasons for all of that. And so I think the biggest thing that he struggled with at therapy itself was feeling all this extra blame being put on him. And I think that's where a lot of the relief and a lot of the growth in working forward was my willingness to accept responsibility for my side.
Yeah. I mean, I think that will help a lot of people move forward, whether it's a man or a woman. It's us, accepting responsibility. And is that one of the reasons this, the situation that happened, is that why he no longer, he doesn't work there anymore, correct?
Oh, he still works at the same place.
Just the other ones work there?
No, the others don't work there.
Okay. Did they just decide to leave, or were they laid off because of that rumor that was going around?
Honestly, I don't know. I don't know what happened on that side of things. They were in a different department. So I can't actually answer that, but I know they're not around anymore.
And how did you find out they were no longer around? Like, how did you feel comfortable with him still going to work after that?
Well, that took a while as well. I know at first I felt deep shame because I told you it was all very public, right? Everyone at work found out. So I felt a lot of shame even going into work, feeling like...
Oh, you worked there too?
No, I didn't work there, but I mean going to visit him.
Okay.
Because I felt like everyone was going to judge me for sticking around.
Okay.
But I don't know. We just got through it. We just managed to keep those communication channels open, and we definitely had, phones had to be open for a long time, and a lot of it happened over Snapchat. So Snapchat is we couldn't have that anymore. Yeah.
And is he able to be on any other type of social media, or is it just Snapchat?
Oh, yeah. We're no longer worried about any of that. Yeah.
And is that a reason you went to the job and visited him, even though you felt a little shame because you still didn't quite trust him?
No. I went to work because I stop in at work and I visit him and I bring the kids, and so we just learned to push through. And navigate the challenges together.
And were you visiting him before the infidelity happened?
Yes, but not as much because I had a brand new baby, and getting out of the house was just too hard with that and the depression and all the things that was happening. Yeah.
Right. And so what would you tell men who have the same challenge as your husband had, and the temptation that he faced when you were pregnant?
I would tell men to talk to their partners, to face fears. But I think also the biggest thing is that I want to tell women is to soften and to hear what our men are trying to say, because it's not an attack. We want our men to talk to us about their challenges, right? We want our men to feel safe to communicate their needs and their wants and all of that. But we can get so judgmental. We can get so, I just want to use the word hard.
Okay. And so why did he not feel safe?
Because I was not easy to talk to.
Did you feel safe talking to him?
Not at that stage, no. Okay,
so neither one of you all felt safe. Mm-hmm. And so I always wonder this: did you ever ask him would he be willing to stay if you stepped out on him?
Well, I know that we early on in our relationship we had the conversation that if there was cheating, there was no way we could stay. Mm-hmm. And I feel like that's an easy thing to say until you've been in it.
Right. But would he be willing to stay if you stepped out on him?
I don't know.
You never asked him at this point?
I don't know if I asked him that question, but we definitely had the conversation about, because after all this, he was like, hang on, are you having your needs met too? And like, so he obviously started thinking about that as a possibility, but I don't think we ever actually had that conversation. No.
Were you having your needs met?
I wasn't really aware of my needs.
You weren't?
No, I wasn't.
I thought you said you needed help with the children. I thought you said it was hard.
Yes, but in terms of like, I still didn't know exactly what I needed. I know that I expected him to like solve all the issues, mm-hmm. to basically just make things easier, but I didn't know what that looked like.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You needed emotional support at the time when you were depressed, or did he try to talk to you?
He tried.
He tried,
and I did not listen.
What did you not listen to?
A lot of it was around parenting stuff, because mm-hmm. I was just like with the baby, because I felt like I was the only one that knew what needed to be done. Like, what is he? I had a real like, what does he know kind of mentality, mm-hmm. when it came to our baby, because he was also colicky and mm-hmm. All the screaming, and he's trying to like come up with solutions and that kind of thing, but I wasn't having a bar of it.
Yeah.
So that's another part of it. I would talk to like other mom friends and what are they doing with their babies and what have they got, but I didn't want to listen to what he had to say or what he had to share about him.
And I'm gonna go on the question more about, what would you tell women after I go back to the men, because you kind of like flipped over that a little bit, but as far as men, because I'm sure your husband, well, I would hope he would express his needs more now, right? And But men, when a woman is in a vulnerable state, I'm talking about having a baby, not just having a baby, but having a baby after you just had a baby. Because 2 years, well, they say a woman doesn't really snap back until 7 years after. So even though the baby was 2.5 before you got pregnant again, you were still in postpartum. And so, I mean, I would say get with other men who are stronger than you, because temptations do come, and I talk about this because obviously you said that he was speaking with a boys club and their conversation wasn't too healthy. Right. So what do you think about if he was with a support group of mature men who knew about what a woman could go through and who knew how to help? You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I do.
So I want you to speak on that aspect of actually, because that's why we're here to learn.
Well, I think a lot of it is being aware of the types of circumstances that you're putting yourself in.
Okay.
Because when you're aware that temptation exists everywhere, right? So if you are in a vulnerable place and your relationship is in a vulnerable place, and you put yourself into a position where opportunities are in front of you, it's going to make it more challenging. So avoid those kinds of situations. But also, I did have something that came up a moment ago, but I've lost it.
I understand. Or take notes while we. That's right.
But I think it's also around compassion. Oh, that was it. So I know that my husband really struggled when I get emotional. Like, he doesn't want to say things because he's afraid that it's going to make me cry. Right? So I think a lot of men struggle with that because they don't want to hurt us, right? And our response can be to get angry or to cry or whatever it is. And I think understanding that reaction is not based on the words that they're saying, right? It's just our own reaction, and that we're allowed to have those reactions. It doesn't mean that we don't want to hear it. Or that we don't need to hear it.
Yeah. Right. And so how is your household now? Like you said, it turned into something like really beautiful. Like after how many therapy sessions, or after 2018, when did it start getting solid again?
Well, not only did we have our couples therapy, I also did EMDR therapy personally. So for those that don't know what that is, it's eye movement desensitization something. So basically it alleviated some of the trauma associated, which makes it a lot easier to talk about what happened. But in terms of, it takes time. I don't remember exactly how long it took for us for things to be really good. But now we have an amazing sex life. We talk about everything all the time. We obviously still argue and have our moments, but our turnaround rate is really fast. And we're able to understand why we feel the way that we do and how to resolve our issues as they come up.
That's good. And so I just want to make sure I understand the timeline. You got married 9 years ago. So that was in 2000.
2015.
2015. And then he stepped out in 2018.
Mm-hmm.
You found out in 2018 as well? Or was it the beginning of 2019?
It would have been the beginning of 2019. Yeah.
Okay, the beginning of 2019. And then when did you all start going to therapy?
That was like a week after. So
okay. Well,
this was March 2019.
March 2019. You found out and y'all started going to therapy like immediately afterwards.
Mm-hmm.
We're getting really into this. How did he feel? Like, was he scared when you found out?
Oh yeah.
Or did he cry?
Oh yeah. Mm-hmm.
Did he think you were going to leave him?
Mm-hmm.
And that was when he realized he never wanted to do this again?
Yep.
And so anyone who wants to reconcile their differences, what would you advise to them?
That it's possible.
Mm-hmm.
That you have to be 100% vulnerable.
On both sides?
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. You have to break down those walls.
Yeah. And something that you taught me just kind of re-emphasized it is both parties have to take responsibility. And one thing you said is you have to understand that the truth will take you further, faster. Basically, you can't hold back.
It's funny. One of the first things I said when we went to therapy is like, "Well, we're not here to muck around. Let's just get it all out."
Right. And so, I mean, you've been very vulnerable today. I mean, even as we talk, I'm like, this is a part of your healing. Not only do you help other people, but it's further healing for you. And vulnerability is beautiful. It's such a strength. And I'm so glad now we get to go into that soft spot that you were talking about with women. You encourage women to be more soft. Can you please explain that?
So it's funny. I've just releasing my own podcast episode about this softening and this vulnerability, because we get so caught up in our masculine energy.
Mm-hmm.
And so we're just talking about energy, but like where we defend ourselves, we have to do all the things, we're responsible, right? We take it all on, yeah? And so when we're in that masculine energy, we get defensive. We're fighting with our partners. We want to be right. We want to get our way, that kind of thing. Mm-hmm. But instead, we need to soften. We need to tap back into our feminine, which is our intuition, which is our creativity and our ease and our flow. Mm-hmm. And in doing so, we focus more on understanding each other. Mm-hmm. And that really is the key. We just need to be empathetic. Be like, okay, I can understand why you feel that way. And let's come up with a way to move forward that we both understand. Because I talk about how many couples fight over the dishwasher. So I don't know how many people listening also fight over the dishwasher. But we would fight over who puts the dishes in the in the right place. But it's not actually about that. The thing that was really at the base of that argument was about not being heard, or not feeling like the way we stack the dishwasher is valid to the other person. So whatever your reason for the fight or reason for whatever it is, it's understanding why, for one, and then being able to communicate that, and then to be able to come up with a solution together. So our solution is, because we both realize that we both feel like the way that we stack the dishwasher isn't being valued by the other person. So our solution is, okay, well, if you're going to stack the dishwasher, you can stack the dishwasher and I'll stay out of it.
Right.
Right? Problem solved.
Right. And so when you were explaining what soft means, you mentioned how we can be masculine, women can be masculine and want to defend themselves. So are you saying soft means don't defend yourself?
No, I mean, soft means understanding why and the way you communicate it.
Okay, so like the tone. Okay.
And coming from a place of curiosity.
Okay.
So what you could ask yourself, like, why am I feeling angry about this? Why am I getting defensive? Like, what is this? How is this helping anything? And then curious about the other person. Why are they getting upset about this? How can we resolve this issue? How can we, because I think the softness really just comes from being vulnerable and honest.
It sounds like what you're saying soft in is character building. Because does that mean a man who is the man supposed to be soft or is he supposed to be hard?
Well, the key is to both be balanced.
Okay.
Because we're talking about energies. We're not talking about actually being masculine or feminine. We're just talking about the way that we approach things. And so we need that balance of masculine and feminine energy.
Okay. So if you have a more feminine man, is that when you be the more masculine woman or be hard, or since we want to balance it out?
It depends on the circumstance, I think. So like masculine energy is more like structure and could be physical strength and that kind of thing. So I think in terms of, for example, say we're organizing, you want to go on a date, right? So you want to go on a date, or you want your partner to organize a date, but you're, I don't know, struggling to let go of what you want that to look like. So being in control is very much the masculine energy. So releasing some of that control and the expectation is coming more into your feminine.
Okay.
So if he organizes a date, but it's not the date that you had in mind, that's an example of being too much in the masculine.
Okay.
Because if you want someone else to organize a date, you let them organize a date.
Okay, you're talking about leadership, not necessarily.
Yeah, but it's still that's the, I guess, the way it shows up, but it's still a masculine energy.
Right. I was just trying to differentiate the word of leadership versus control, because I think those are two different things.
Yes,
right?
They are.
Yeah, but look, listen. This was great, because the conversation what we're going into now is, I think that's a whole nother topic that's deeper into this character building thing, and it's important for everyone for us to lead in our capacities, for us to lead in our capacities. And that's probably a whole different class you got to teach. There's
a lot in it.
There's a lot to that. So I thank you so much. I had 1,000,001 questions, and I appreciate you for asking. If there was anything that you wanted to leave us with, what would that be?
I think it's just that infidelity is not the not the thing that's gonna cause a relationship to fall apart. I think it's what happens leading up to that is where you need to focus your attention, because infidelity doesn't happen unless there's something that's not right. Because there's obviously, if there's no room for somebody else to come in, right, then they won't. So it's getting curious. It's about accepting responsibility, about being vulnerable, and it's hard. It's fucking hard. Okay, but that's where the magic is.
Well, I appreciate you, Miss Keri. I'm about to close this out, but please stay right here, okay, for me?
Yep.
All right, just one moment. Thank you all so much for tuning in to another awesome episode of The Other Woman. Remember that Conversations with Grace airs next week on Thursday at 8:45, and The Other Woman will air the week after, also on Thursday at 8:45 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I remember, I got to say that because we have so many women in the group who are from all over the world. But once again, thank you so much. And I see the glare. Look, I see the glare. We're going to get this right. Okay. But thank you so much. And until next time.